my name is Sophia.
I'm Abby.
I'm Hunter.
My name is Edgar.
And today we're going to be talking about sex education in regards to national versus international.
At home and abroad.
So to define sex education is high-quality teaching and learning about a broad variety of topics related to sex and sexuality, exploring values and beliefs about these topics, and gaining the skills that are needed to navigate relationships and manage one's own sexual health. So these topics include human development, relationships, personal skills, sexual behavior, sexual health, and then society and culture. So in regards to the United States of America, the National Conference of State Legislators explained that only 24 states require a formal sex education program, and only 13 of those states require that the sex education program be medically accurate. So what do you all think of that?
That's ridiculous, actually. Like, only 13 require them to be medically accurate, and only 24 out of all the states that we have.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly scary that we're educating
We're not educating.
students about false information.
Yeah, and it's very telling to the whole entire states' rights aspect of it too, and that some states probably just don't feel the need to even teach such things, So, and they should they have the right to not teach those things? It's a whole other ball game. And in regards to there being a lack of education on sex in those states, it's even further amplified the lack of education when it comes to gender. I don't know about you guys, but I learned nothing about gender when I was going through school.
Neither did I.
I did not.
Nope, not at all.
Absolutely nothing. So that inspired me to look a bit more into gender in some of the different countries, for example, Canada. I really honed in on Canada to see what are they doing in regards to gender education, and they're doing a lot more than the United States. They're very, very progressive. And the main form of teaching they have is the SOGI curriculum. So it's sexual orientation and gender identity curriculum in Canada. Basically, teachers are teaching students that are elementary school aged about sex and gender. The curriculum is built around trying to embrace diversity and help instill acceptance for children at a young age. The curriculum has a variety of queer topics within it, such as different forms families can take, such as having two fathers, two mothers, or even one of the parents being transgender potentially. It's very open and very liberal in that way, I suppose. They have various books in different ways that they educate kids. One of the books they have is called Red, a Crayon Story. It basically follows the story of a blue crayon trying to be accepted in that it's labeled as red, but it wants to be accepted in the group as being a different color. And it's a clear parallel to being trans in society. And it's surprising it's being taught at such a young age, but also quite inspirational. They also allow children to play with whatever toys or outfits they prefer, which is innocent enough. I think we should all do that. Mm-hmm. But then they might even go as far as the teacher's going to explain the gender expression a student might take through playing with a certain toy or putting on a certain outfit. Another example of the SOGI program in Canada is the Rainbow Song that is being taught to some of these children. It can be found online, but for anyone who doesn't want to go listen to it, it's basically just kids learning to sing lyrics like some boys like dressing up and some girls like catching snakes. The education seems to have somewhat of a political stance in Canada and educating on these LGBTQ plus themes very, very early on. It's elementary kids we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So what are your guys' thoughts on the SOGI program in Canada?
I think it's very beneficial. In regards to your statement on letting them play with whatever toys or outfits, I think there's such a misunderstanding in America, if a boy wants to dress up, it's not necessarily because he is wanting to cross-dress, but rather there's studies in psychology on they're around their mother, they're watching their mother put on makeup, they're watching them dress in dresses, and so they want to be like their mom. If they're around a parent who is female or male, they're tending to do what that parent is doing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's good that they're teaching that it's okay to play with whatever you want to play with because you're a child and you're innocent and you don't know any better. If you like it, then you like it.
But how about taking that additional step to saying you're expressing some form of gender by doing that? Do you think we should be teaching that as well? It's a hard question.
It is.
What are you guys' thoughts, Sophia, Edgar, on SOGI?
I kind of agree that it's extremely beneficial, removing the gender roles that are established by society is something that we're slowly taking steps towards, but through that program I feel we could take greater steps towards it.
It's very, very progressive in trying to teach acceptance at a young age.
Yeah,
Sophia?
even bringing up those topics at a younger age here in the United States, I think would be beneficial. This is definitely an in-depth program, but even just taking some of their ideas and implementing them here might be the next step that we could take.
Cool. Could you foresee any backlash if the U.S. were to do that, were to actually kind of intake some of the lessons from Canada and give them out to children now?
I could definitely see some backlash. Some people are not going to be happy with that, but this is just educating individuals. I think that individuals might have an issue with like the age that this is being taught at and the material that's being taught. So I'm not necessarily sure how that would play out, but I do think that learning about gender and sex education is important. Implementing that at a younger age and giving like children and young adults education on this topic is important.
I feel like you would definitely see some backlash from like the older populations. I feel like they were kind of taught to be more really conservative. Getting like exposed to something like that at such an early age, they would not be really going for. But among like the younger people, I feel like they're more accepting of that, so they would just kind of go with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think depending on what political party is in office at the time, but also there would be backlash towards that. I think since this is more of a liberal, progressive idea, the conservative party may not be in favor. If this is implemented by the government, it may not pass until the other party is in office.
And it's interesting too, like in regards to preaching acceptance, like according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, more than half of transgender male teens who participated in the survey they did attempted suicide in their lifetime, and 29.9% of transgender female teens try to do the same. So if we started implementing these lessons, could this help these teens in their lives? Do you think it could like make them feel better and not have such a harrowing statistic in such a small population?
I think so. I think educating everyone and like maybe having an ally program. I know we have an ally program on campus here. Kind of implementing that so that they feel more accepted and they feel safe in their environment. I think that's a really important factor.
Lastly, at what age should we be educating students about gender?
I think it's a topic that needs to be talked about at a younger age, so like children have more awareness. At what depth people want to go into that discussion is debatable, but it's definitely something that needs to be talked about.
Maybe like a progression, like maybe just like hints of it here early in elementary school education, and then get actually into the roots of it in middle school and onwards.
Yeah.
I agree.
I agree. I think also like puberty has to play with that because like elementary school kids, like they might not be like, you know, as exposed as a middle school age child would.
And maybe exposing them too early could have potential negative drawbacks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of possibilities that we just don't know. It's very new for our society, but also old.
Yeah. Well, that takes me to like Australia, because in Victoria, Australia, there's like sex education that is taught from like prep to the 10th year that you're in Australian schools. And by year 6, they want you to be able to like know the body parts and how they work. They want you to have practice in talking and asking for help about like your feelings and relationships. They want you to be prepared for puberty and understand the importance of respect in relationships and understanding how babies are born. The 6 themes that they cover in like primary school education is like knowing yourself, like knowing gender roles, and then covering puberty, like the changes occur, and knowing like the parts of the body, and knowing who you can turn to when you want to talk about something. How do you guys feel about like them being taught that at such a young age?
I think it being so young can be seen as worrying a lot of people, towards a lot of people, like especially religious or like politically influenced individuals. Because talking about like reproductive health at the age of 10 does seem a bit too early for me. However, is it still a need? Maybe. It depends on their society as well, right? Because if their culture and their society in Canada is like those themes come up even earlier in the US, then of course it's more needed.
I think it could benefit the country positively if you're educating students. It could make them more mature when it comes to these topics. They might be more comfortable talking about it, which is overall just a better thing than avoiding these topics altogether.
Yeah, I like the 6 different things that they want students to know about. for example, somebody to talk to, like turning to people if they have questions or if they're upset or
Right.
worried, and having these kind of overall topics that they go over, like it covers a lot and it seems to be more inclusive.
And it's not so much about like the actual act as much, which people would be even more terrified about,
Yeah.
I can imagine. It's more so just knowing yourself, which is vital.
Definitely.
For sure. Their argument for it is because they believe that the students from ages 5 to 8 already show interest in the creation of babies and having a growing awareness of puberty, gender roles, and the fact that not everybody is heterosexual. They do give the option for parents to withdraw their students taking those type of courses.
I think it's essential to give the parents some autonomy in that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, either way, a student, especially in today's world with technology and social media, they're going to find out about these things eventually, especially like starting younger than when we were in school. Even if a parent does decide to withdraw their student for the time being, the student will eventually hopefully be able to catch up and know about this.
Right, especially in a more progressive society like this one, for sure. If they're teaching it so young, it's going to be a constant theme they're hammering in,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So they will get the education eventually, which is good, considering we have, what, 24 states with an actual program in the U.S., was it? Yikes.
And only 13 are medically accurate.
And how many discuss gender? Probably like
None.
5. Very few, I'm sure.
So in relation to kind of ignoring a problem, Guam actually has the highest teen pregnancy rate. So out of 1,000 girls, 48 from the age of 15 to 19 are pregnant. So that's primarily due to their Catholicism. They don't support the use of contraceptives. So these teenagers are participating in sexual activity without protection, then becoming pregnant. And so, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Do you think they should implement a program that, you know, or is religion such a...
Well, it depends on the society, you know?
Right.
If the majority of the society is like preferred to have those standpoints, right? If the majority of people agrees with those standpoints, then who are we to say you should change everything? I mean, we can say it, but should we force them to? No.
Right. And even
That's-
recently, the Pope came out with a statement about contraceptives and condom usage, which is, I know from my personal experience with knowing people who are Catholic, some support condom usage, but most don't support like Plan B or abortions. So then that gets into a whole different what is accepted and what is not.
Right, and it's the same not just in Guam, but in many like even in states of more like Republican or religious-oriented states. Like we were looking at a map earlier, and they also had high rates of teen pregnancy, which I'll pull up for you guys to see right now. Or Republican states have a lot more pregnancies per 1,000 births than liberal states like those in the Northeast, like New York, Mass, and such.
Right.
Although there are like more leftist states still have a decent amount than 20.3 to 29.9, but still in the Beltway in Texas and onwards, it's a harsh red, similar to Guam, which is 48.4. 48.4.
Yeah. Do you think that's due to lack of knowledge? And
Yes, and I'm sure that those states right there are one of the ones who aren't teaching it.
Right.
You know.
the U.S. has a national average of 24 out of 1,000.
Right. But the statewide average is more telling in terms of culture and the effects that it has.
Right.
So guys, we learned a lot about different countries in regards to sex and gender and the education of such. Do you guys have any final thoughts about what you think the United States really needs to hammer in on more in regards to sex and gender?
Education is important, and we need an educated population. Sex education needs to be talked about more. So just even taking a look at the ideas and concepts of other countries and what they're implementing might be useful for us.
Yeah, for sure. I think borrowing from Australia is very essential in the understanding of self as a person you are sexually and in your gender roles. I think that's something we should really borrow off of, and knowing who you are as you're beginning to evolve.
One thing that I'd like to see is having our states have formal sex education programs and having those be medically accurate.
100%.
Yeah. I
So-
think this will probably be more of a like step-by-step thing. It obviously can't happen all at once. So
Yeah. What I'm noticing is that the United States is definitely more step by step in its more progressive policy and how it intakes it. Whereas a lot of these nations are doing like strides and leaps and bounds as soon as the issues appear,
Right.
which is very interesting for our society. But that also goes to show how diverse we are as a nation, and the different opinions we all have, and the influence of states too.
Yeah, I think if we start implementing better sex education, that opens the doors to gender, like talking about genders and gender identity. So I think that just opens up a whole doorway to all the topics that we covered in this podcast.
And this wonderful, amazing sex education podcast. All right, I'm Hunter,
I'm Sophia.
I'm Abby.
And I'm Andrew.
and we're signing off.
Boom, ba-da-boom.
Boom, 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 boom.
Boom, ba-da-boom.
Boom, boom, boom.
Boom, ba-da-boom.